I can't speak with authority on any place outside of 5 boroughs of New York City, but I can tell you that we think we have roughly 500,000 undocumented. They have a very low crime rate because they don't want to go near the INS. They pay taxes. 75% of them pay taxes. There's withholding, and there's no place to send the refund. The Social Security Administration's chief actuary actually estimated that Social Security will go bankrupt 6 years earlier if you didn't have the undocumented in this country. But the undocumented, because they pay Social Security, but they don't get any benefits. In New York City, the undocumented typically are young people who come here to work. They don't bring their children, so they don't use the public schools. There are some exceptions, but generally that's true. They are young people who work. People that work aren't using the hospitals. Most of us use most of our medical care in the last few years of our life, and these are people who are of working age that come here. So it is, and lastly, every study we've ever done says they take jobs that nobody else will take. Not totally. I'm sure you can find some exceptions. But generally speaking, the undocumented are critical to our economy. And the fact that New York City's economy is doing better than the rest of the country, our unemployment rate is now lower than the country's as a whole. Life expectancy is now higher in New York City than the country as a whole. We created 10% of all the private sector jobs in this country in the last 10 months. Says that we are doing something right, and what is right is we have attracted, not just from overseas, but from the rest of the country, immigrants who want the chance to participate in the great American dream. That's the great strength of New York City, and I, for the life of me, don't understand why other people don't look at it and say maybe they should try it. It might not be right for the rest of this country. I'm not here to preach to them.
Migrants, especially the undocumented, tend to use medical service much less than the average American. In fact, the average migrant uses less than half the dollar amount of health care service as the average native-born citizen. Non-citizens who are eligible for food stamps are significantly less likely to use than all other individuals who are eligible for the program.
What is your beef with illegal immigration?
Well, Rick, the problem with illegal immigration is that it's multifold. First of all, you've got some folks that are here that collect benefits and that put a burden on the taxpayers, and there's not enough balance to the benefit they're providing.
Okay, but just a quick stop. Just a quick stop. You know those people are paying taxes, right?
Some of them do pay some taxes.
No, they
sure.
all pay taxes.
Sometimes.
No, Mr. Murphy, they all pay taxes, sir. Stop and think for a moment. Are you an elected official?
Yes, I am, Rick.
So you think that people come to this country all steal?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Do they all steal?
Well, no, they don't all steal. But
okay, so
let me give you an
just
example,
answer the question. Do they all steal? Do they all live in caves?
I don't think very many of them live in caves.
Okay, so if they go to the grocery store to buy goods, they pay taxes. It's called the sales tax, right?
Well, most cities here don't tax groceries, but besides that,
okay,
let me give you an example.
Since you're going to
My
be
wife
real
and I are
smart,
foster parents.
but let's continue the conversation. I don't want your talking points.
All right.
When a person comes to the United States, if they live here and they don't steal and live under the cave, are they paying property taxes and sales taxes?
If they buy a home, they're paying property taxes. Sure.
What if they rent a home and the person who rents it, who collects their rent, charges them that property tax?
Well, with our real estate market, there's not a real clear issue there.
Can you live in property in the United States, sir, without paying a property tax?
Not very easily.
Thank you. Can you buy something at a store without paying a sales tax?
Not in most states.
So why do you go around telling Americans that these people don't pay taxes, or some of them, as you say?
I didn't say they don't pay taxes.
You just said that a minute ago.
What I say is,
you said some of them do.
I said the costs they incur. I said the costs they incur do not balance out the costs or the taxes that they pay.
So they pay. So okay. So let's just leave it at that. So even illegal immigrants pay taxes, right?
They do pay some.
Thank you. Let's move on to another point. Do you think that the benefits that they give, do you know any benefits that they give Americans?
That the illegal immigrants give Americans?
Yeah, like what?
Well, some companies and some people benefit from the cheap labor, but on the other hand, you have fewer available jobs for Americans, and it drives down wages for Americans that do the same jobs.
Good point. You're
so
absolutely
I'm not
right.
real sure that it's clear
No,
that
you're right.
there's a benefit there.
You're right, and it's very well stated.
Immigrants, especially the undocumented, tend to use medical services much less than the average American. In fact, the average immigrant uses less than half the dollar amount of health care services as the average native-born citizen. Non-citizens who are eligible for food stamps are significantly less likely to use them than all other individuals who are eligible for the program.
Pedro makes $12 an hour digging this irrigation ditch outside a garage here in Santa Fe. He moved to New Mexico this summer because he's an illegal immigrant and he was fearful of Arizona's new immigration law.
I understand there's a frustration that people think there's too much competition in the workplace. I understand why some people would want us to go back.
But Pedro doesn't want to go back to Mexico. He's been in the U.S. as an undocumented worker for almost half his life.
How many years have you been out of Mexico?
20 years, 21 years.
Do you have any family in Mexico?
No more family.
Though much has been said about the benefits illegal immigrants enjoy in the U.S., the fact is many of them say life here is much harder than you might imagine.
Where's your room?
Okay, my room is over here.
Pedro lives with a Mexican family whom he recently met. This is where he sleeps.
That is my bed. I don't have any clothes. The only clothes I have.
This room contains all his worldly possessions. He needed money and sold some of his other things when he left Arizona.
How hard is it to have so little? You have a sleeping bag, you only have 4 shirts, you have 2 pairs of shoes. It's all you own in the world right now. How difficult is it for you?
It's really, really difficult. I think nobody wants to get this kind of life.
Hard as life is, and as long as he's been living in the shadows here, he still has big dreams. To someday get his contractor's license, to get a formal education, and to find a wife.
I have a lot of hope. I want to restart again.
You have a lot of hope that things will get better for you.
Yes.
To be clear, Pedro would like to be a U.S. citizen, but like so many illegal Mexican immigrants, doesn't want to go back to Mexico indefinitely while waiting for the small possibility of approval, especially with no family there. He feared that if he stayed in Arizona, he would be arrested for a motor vehicle violation and get deported back to Mexico.
What were you scared of in Arizona?
Well, the police, the sheriff.
But in New Mexico, which is widely considered more tolerant to immigrants than Arizona, there are residents who think their state needs to be more strict.
Do you feel that New Mexico needs to toughen its laws against illegal immigrants?
Do they need to? Well, considering the threat, terrorism, I would say yeah.
Pedro says he thinks the bad guys should be kicked out too, but he says he's a good guy.
You've been in this country 21 years.
Yes,
Do you feel more like a Mexican or an American?
in America.
Despite new pressures in the new law in Arizona, Pedro says he's digging in, more committed than ever to staying in the U.S. Gary Tuckman, CNN, Santa Fe, New Mexico.
This is what you're dealing with. What you're dealing with. This is what you're dealing with. Let me tell you what you're dealing with. Immigrants generate public revenue. Whoever knew or cared to get a clue, let me set the mood by saying that they pay every state 80 grand more in taxes. In fact, their advisors say the long-run impact of immigration is an immense invitation for our public budget to rise instead of fall. Glide instead of crawl, you might as well get involved. While the cost of educating immigrants' kids in colleges may be high, but long-run impacts remain positive. Serving benefits to native-born citizens while they're sitting in. Immigrants get underpaid, picking things for us to eat. It's sickening, but lucky me. Tell me how you feel making $16 a week. Yeah, and exaggeration's necessary. Labor force of immigrants should make them legendary. And I have another point to make. Undocumented workers lower than the unemployment rate. So how's it taking away privileges of non-working citizens? This is what you're dealing with. What you're dealing with. This is what you're dealing with. Yeah, what you're dealing with. Let me tell you what you're dealing with. This is what you're dealing with. Told you what we're dealing with. So that's what you're dealing with. Showed you what you're dealing with.